Hi guys and welcome back. This time around I'm bringing you two products from Penon, a brand that those that follow me know that I am a big fan of. I've always liked their products. I wish I could um, test some of their latest more high-end models. I haven't been able to get my hands on them, but I did get my hands on the PENON Fan3s, which is the upgraded version of the original PENON Fan 3, and I did get my hands on the new flagship single DD, which is the Unique. I'll talk about the Fan 3s first, and then the Unique, and then when I talk about the Unique, I'll obviously mention what I've got there. PENON Fan 3 was an IEM that was launched as a tribrid featuring two 6mm drivers, two BAs, and a single bond conduction with the switch to switch on and off the bond conduction. That was a really good implementation. Look, to cut a long story short, it was a good implementation of a bond conduction. Why? Because bone conductions usually, especially when they are more focused on the lower frequencies, they have a tendency, when the implementation is poor, to bring a certain echo to the sound, which just spoils the whole presentation. And the Fan 3, priced at $329, if I'm not mistaken, 329, I think, yes. 329, the Fan 3, yes. The original Fan 3 might have been a little bit cheaper, maybe 299. But at that price point, we hadn't really seen a solid enough implementation, at least in a hybrid configuration. It used two 6mm CNT drivers with a Sonian and a Knowles BA, and then that bone conduction. And we had seen some solid implementations as well, of course, in the case of some of the products from VQ EYZ, but they were basically single DDs with the bond conduction or with the microplanar, so a much more simpler implementation. And the IM I'm talking in particular is the Wind, and that meant that, you know, to get it to sound correct and do its thing was way easier than what it is in a hybrid. And at this price point, we didn't really have anything that was, let's say, solid enough. We did start finding really good implementations of this configuration at higher prices, but of course, not all of us can go that far and can afford those more expensive IEMs. Give me 1 second. I'm just trying here to put here the. Yes, okay, here we go. Okay, so no, there we go. This, and this, exactly. Okay, as I was saying, the Fan 3 followed very much the typical Penon sound, a gliding style of bass with you can say an overemphasized meta style of Pina, or transition into the mids and upper mids. And what I mean by that is Penon, in this style of sound that they usually would do their IEMs, they would have a very minor rise of Pina, which kind of glided over from 1 to 2 kilohertz, and then peaked, and then went up into 3 kilohertz. Well, when I show you the graph, you'll understand what I mean. That dip there at around 5-6 kilohertz to take away any probable sibilance, and then again a rise, and then a drop again with some extension past 10K. So very nice implementation of those BAs, very nice coherence between those BAs and the dual 6mm drivers, and it sounded really nice. That's the reality. It sounded really, really nice. It had clarity up top, great, phenomenal, typical Penon style of organic mids, and then with the bone conduction on, you got that little extra magic that would give sound just a little bit more, I would say, space, honestly. To be honest, my personal preference, but that's just me, is to have that switch off, and that's how I think, for me personally, that the Penon sounds the best. But the reality is, it was well done. It was well done, and there were very, very few songs that I actually kind of got that feeling that I was mentioning. That okay, it gives me that sensation that I'm listening to a song from from a tunnel, from the entrance of a tunnel. No, it did things really well. That's the truth. The Fan 3s, what have they done on the Fan 3s? They've basically kept the same BAs. In essence, they've swapped out the two 6mm drivers for two 6.2 bio diaphragm drivers, and kept as well the BCD. And what they've done now is, by using the two bio diaphragm drivers, which have got a different, although similar in terms of the way that they've been tuned, and when you see the graph, you'll understand they've got a different tonality bio diaphragm drivers, and it just gave the overall sound of the Fan 3s an extra richness in the bass, which I have to say I much appreciated. And I think that was further emphasized by the way that they've given that energy then to the BAs to complement that extra richness, and it's kind of a two-way thing. That extra thickness of the bass is complemented by that extra energy, and is a product of that extra energy of the BAs, and that extra energy of the BAs could only be accepted if you had that extra energy from the bass as well. The biggest difference here is, while with that 100 hertz point, and look, I'll actually keep it for the graph section to explain. The biggest difference is, what you notice is you got a little bit more vocal clarity on the 3s. Vocals sound more forward, but never aggressive. The sound has just opened up. It's just come up. It's just come alive. If we had really good mids before, that were clean, detailed, and a typical Penon sound, this is that typical Penon sound with some vitamins. And those vitamins have been much welcomed, because it actually opened up the sound to a point where I think this is the way that it should have always have sounded, to be honest. I think if the Penon Fan 3 had always sounded like this, I think it would have been an IN that would have been accepted more effectively by the majority of the crowd. But then again, Penon, I don't think is a brand that is worried about everybody liking their product, or their product being for everybody. They've always had a philosophy where their product is designed for people that like specific styles and specific types of sound, and you see that across the board with all of their products. They always have a slight different nuance to that house tuning. You could notice maybe perhaps a little bit more in the older products, but still in the more recent products, you still notice that they've in the more recent products kind of allowed their tuning to be a little bit more mainstream, in the sense that they've given that extra vitamins, like I said earlier, and they've made things become a little bit more, let's say, widely liked by a larger group of people. And that's, I think, in essence, is the biggest difference between the Fan 3 and the Fan 3s. The difference in the drivers, especially in the bass drivers, obviously, has allowed for a retune in the mids, upper mids, and treble. That retune in the mids, upper mids, and treble has been necessary to then clean up and give those bio drivers their desired cleanliness and impact. And the bass here, like I said, is really, really good. Well, on both of them, but the bass is really, really good. It's clean, it's detailed, it's got that nice, rich, warm, organic feel to it. And then you have those mids, which are again the typical Penon lushness, really, really nice, but with that little bit extra of energy, which just makes the vocals come alive. Males and female vocals, but the female vocals especially come alive, and certain instruments. So there's an added sense of realism to instruments. And the thing that I also noticed was, with the BC connected, it kind of honestly made it sound more realistic to a certain extent. The perception of that slight tunnel sound that on occasions I got on the Fan 3 over here, I would say is basically gone. It's not there, because that extra energy of the BAs has helped to complement that feeling nice in a nicer fashion, a nicer manner, and you just have this overall richer sound. If you have the Fan 3, is it worth selling it and getting the 3s? Look, I'm going to say no. I would say try and emulate the tuning of the Fan 3s, you know, with a nice EQ, especially parametric EQ, and I think you'll pretty much get the same thing as the Fan 3s. If you are in the market to buy one or the other, then I think that the 3s is the safer choice. It's the better choice. You will be getting the magic of what the Fan series is, especially the Fan 3, but with that extra amount of clarity, especially on the vocals, like I said, and the instruments sounding more live, and ultimately even the technicalities such as the sound, as the soundstage and the imaging have been improved by this extra energy given to the BAs, which just is complemented, like I said earlier, by the bass, by the extra warmth of the bass that we have. And look, it's a perfect symbiosis. If there's one thing that's for sure, is they've really did their homework and they hit the nail on the nail on the head. That's it. It's as simple as that. So my opinion, yes. Again, and like I always say, if you have the opportunity to listen to it, do so. Don't just take my word for being the only word. Go listen to other reviewers, maybe listen to other reviewers that do have taste similar to yours, and you know, you get a better feel for the IM. One thing is for sure, if you like the Fan 3, or if you're an owner of the Fan 3, I can guarantee you will like the 3S. Definitely. I think the 3S will definitely fill in the gaps of what maybe existed in the Fan 3 for you, like it did for me in certain aspects. You know, I liked the warmth, the organic sense of the sound, but there were occasions where I would like a little bit more liveliness, just a little bit more detail, a little bit more, you know, and the 3S has done that perfectly. Anyway, that's the PENON Fan 3 and Fan 3S, my apologies, out of the way. I'll show you the graphs afterwards, like I said, and you'll understand a few things better than what I was saying. On to the UNIQ, and what did I bring out to compare the UNIQ with? Well, I brought out the Vortex, which is the previous single DD from, or flagship single DD from PENON. They both use a CNT driver. I don't know if it's the same CNT driver. The difference here is that on the Vortex we had an all resin shell, and here on the UNIQ we have a metal shell, which is open back from what I am able to understand. Yeah, let me see if I can. Okay, all right. That open back design, the metal shell, those are definitely two contributors to making the sound the way that it is. And what is the sound of the UNIQ? Just one more second. I brought out here the plunge unit, the plunge audio Unity Dynamic, and the ODA D100 Helios. Why? Because these three, they have basically the same style, the same tuning. And I think for me to be comparing the UNIQ with these two, and especially when you guys know that I have these two IMs in very high regard, and they were part of my favorite IMs that I tested this year, both the Unity Dynamic and the ODA were two incredible surprises. Not that I wasn't expecting them to be this good. I knew they were going to be good, but I was not expecting to get this level of surprise on both cases. Two different approaches, you know. Simon Fisk has got his own mojo going, and the guys from ODA as well, Jason, they've also got their own mojo going. Two different approaches, but basically the end result is very similar, and the sound on either one is absolutely incredible. Definitely two IMs I recommend. And so for me to say that the UNIQ sits in the same group, or is included in the same group, I think that's really a testament to how highly I think the UNIQ is capable of. You may ask, and rightfully so, well, but if you think it's this good, why not include it in your top 10 group? Look, I could include it in my top 10 group, and if I did that, obviously one of those other IEMs would have to come out. Although I think maybe the reason why I don't include it is just because the sound style and the type of sound that I'm getting here from the UNIQ is basically what I'm getting on these two, so it would kind of be redundant to have three IEMs which sound so equal. But to be fair, yes, I could say that I would I would include this, the Unique, as one of my top 10 single dynamics above $100. And talking about price, this is $224. The Unity Dynamic is about $280. The D100, the Yearly, is about the same thing, $280. So definitely this is the cheapest. And if this style of sound is something that you probably like, but you can't stretch yourself out that much, and maybe, who knows, maybe you can benefit from some discount from Penon that they sometimes run. Maybe, who knows, maybe the Unique could be the IM for you. But anyway, let's talk with a little bit more detail about the Unique and how it fares up. Excuse me, my apologies. Anyway, what is the Unique in terms of its sound? Well, it's got this nice rich full bass, which is again something which a lot of Penons have, especially the older style Penons. And then it's got this Pina, which kind of peaks at about 2.5 and then transitions over. There's a peak at 5 and then another peak at 8 and then drops off. Those peaks, especially the 5 and the 8, are not problematic, more the 5 so than the 8, because of that nice rich bass that we get from behind. And there's actually, funny enough, another IM from the Penon group that sounds very similar to this, the SP01 from Soundrhyme, which is about $100. It's got a very similar vibe to the Unique, actually. But, you know, you listen to one and you listen to the other, and straight away you see that you're listening here to something which is more polished. It's been, although the kind of the bass tuning is similar, the way that one presents itself and the other one presents itself is totally different. And one of the things that justifies that is the fact that we have an open back design here, and I'm sure that the driver quality used here in the Unique is a superior driver than the one used in the SP01. But I just thought it would be interesting to mention. So if you've got, basically, to say what, if you guys have an SP01 and you like the SP01 from Soundrhyme, you will like this for sure. Definitely, this is a definite upgrade over the SP01. So nicely done bass, no bleed. It's a thick, well-rounded bass that's clean and detailed. It's imposing. You can feel it, much like what happens in the ODA. The plunge, you don't get so much that feeling because it's a little bit more detailed in that area there between 2 and 4 kilohertz than these two. So the plunge is more detailed in these two in that area, with vocals thus coming across a little bit more energetic. Mids, it's got that nice typical, again, Penon type of rise, and then a plateau, and then a rise again, which just makes, in the case of the Unique, I think the male vocals are the ones that stand out. Male vocals are rich, they've got the right amount of thickness, there's no muddiness in that. With regards to instruments, guitar plucks, they've got a nice twang to them. Cymbals, drum strikes, everything's got that nice imposing, clean feel to it, and it's all down to, like I said, the shell, the open back design, the way that they've tuned, the quality of the driver. All of these things contribute to that experience being very realistic. And when you listen to the Unique, you get a feel that you are listening to the real deal. Honestly, you really do. Male vocals are, like I said, for me, the start of the show. Technically, it's got a slightly smaller soundstage, and it's slightly smaller than both the ODA and the plunge. The plunge is probably the one that's got the most, then the ODA, and then the Unique. In terms of detail retrieval, the plunge is definitely the one that's the most. It's got the most. In terms of timbre and tonality, I would say they trade blows. There's no real winner. They're the same, all three of them. I think that's definitely going to be the best characteristic here. Imaging, I would say that imaging, the plunge slightly ahead, and then the Unique and the ODA very similar. But look, the differences are very minor, and the truth is, for me to have chosen both the plunge and the ODA as my top 10, there was enough on either one of them to not make them redundant, and to make sure that they deserve to be there in that selection. And the Unique, like I said earlier, if you want to consider that as well as part of one of my top 10s, yes, it makes perfect sense, especially then if I consider that the only other IM that really sounds truly the same as it is the ODA, and it's $60 more than $60-70 more than the Unique. And that's basically it, guys. I mean, there's really not much more than what I can say. You know, it's a well built IM. It sounds good. The technically, I guess I would have liked a little bit more soundstage. That's really the only thing that I would have liked. It's a little bit more soundstage, especially because it's an open back. But at the same time, I can't really complain. And the feeling and the reality is why I say that I would like a little bit more soundstage is when you go, you know, from the plunge to the ODA or from the ODA to the plunge, and then you come here, you would expect, or I was expecting, because it was an open back, that the soundstage would have been a little bit more involving. But guys, this is me nitpicking. There's nothing wrong, honestly, with the soundstage. I think the takeaway here is this has got a really competitive price going for it. Really nice accessories package, as is always the case. You know, nice carrying case, great cable. This is the stock cable, great cable, good tip selection. There's really nothing that you can go wrong there, honestly, nothing. And that, I think, will be the main reason why this should be considered as a viable alternative to these two, because in terms of sound, they're very much equal. It's the price here and the accessories that will justify its ultimate purchase. As compared here to the Vortex, they are side grades, completely different style of tuning altogether. I mean, the Vortex is as neutral as can possibly be. When I show you the graphs now, you'll understand what I'm saying. So it's not like, oh, I've got a Vortex, I'm going to sell it and get the... No, if you have a Vortex, you've got a phenomenal IM. Let me just say that much. You've got one of the most underrated single DDs out there, okay? The Unique is a perfect complement to this. You are going to get two different styles of sound, two different vibes, basically. Okay. Anyway, guys, let me show you now the graphs and we'll wrap it up. Okay, so let's talk now graphs. First graph I'm going to show you is the graph for the PENON Fan3. Okay, as you can see, the bone conduction there. The next one is the PENON Fan3 with bone conduction off. Okay. And this is the PENON Fan3s with the bone conduction. Is basically the same thing here. We get that kind of interference here in the graph from the bone conduction. Now, the takeaway here is what bass, although it seems the same, there's a different tonality to that bass, which is down to the different diaphragm being used, and the fact that we've got that extra energy here. If on the Fan3 we had that 100 hertz point corresponding to 2.5, but we had this area here recessed, okay, on the Fan3s, we have the 100 hertz point corresponding to basically 2.2 as opposed to about 2.8, but we've got enough extra energy there to first of all make everything seem more forward, but not excessively so. And we've also got a lot more detail up in the upper mids and transition into the treble to convey that extra clarity, which perfectly matches the different bass tonality that we get from behind from the two 6mm drivers. The rest is basically the same. This here is down to the tip not being inserted as deep as I would have liked, but it wouldn't have changed this. It would have just shifted that peak slightly there. It would have been like the green light, basically. Excuse me, guys. Anyway, that's the Fan3 sorry. Typical PENON sound, that dip there in the mids, but it sounds great. Mid-range is phenomenal, bass is just enough amount, treble the same thing. Can't complain. Personally, like I said, I just prefer with the bone conduction off, even though with the bone conduction on, it has to be said, and I repeat it, it's probably one of the nicest and one of the best implementations, especially at this price point, and especially when you have a hybrid. And it's down to the fact that interference of the bone conduction, or that area where it affects the sound, is more in the low mids to mids than necessarily right down low there, where it could have maybe made things sound a little bit more off-putting. Anyway, that's the PENON. Let's get this all out of the way here so it doesn't confuse us, and let's talk about the Unique. I'm going to start by showing you the graph of the Vortex, and as you can see, the Vortex has got well, let me put this. Let me show you here the graph of the MIM Dark Magician My unit, and I think that automatically will explain a lot of the things. And I think, like I said earlier, the Vortex was very much an IM that didn't get its deserved attention. Um, and if you listen to the Vortex and you listen to the MIM, the thing that will mainly separate the two is not so much the bass, but is the extra amount of clarity that you have here on the Vortex doesn't allow the bass to come out as prominent, and by prominent take that with special attention, as it does on the MIM. The MIM is not by no means a bass monster, but the driver used is capable of very, very good and very high quality bass. And even though it's tuned in such a mild manner with only a 6 dB peak, it's a bass which is it's got presence. It's an imposing bass, and the Vortex is basically the same thing, just with a little extra amount of energy up top here, which then makes the bass sound a little bit not as thick, if that is the best word I could use. Okay, so that's out of the way. This is the Unique. Two totally different IMs, two totally different tuning approaches, side grades, end of story. Okay, now Unique compared with the Unity Dynamic, as you can see, basically the same, just an extra amount of energy between 2 and 4.5 kilohertz. Okay, and compared with the ODA Elias, almost identical, just what would be perceived as maybe less information up top and a slight extra amount of bass, which is not even perceivable, but when you listen to it, no. The ODA has got just as much extension, and I think it's a product to basically this area here sounding a little bit more extra energetic, though this upper treble region. And that's basically it. And as well, the fact that maybe you're using a resin, or sorry, a stabilized wood shell also has contributed to getting the tonality that the ODA has, which gives it more detail than what the graph on its own would lead you to believe. Trust me, there's a lot more detail here than what you would think. Again, coupled to the good quality driver, it's a number of factors here which justify ultimately why it sounds the way they do. But these three, as you can see, all have a lot of very common, they've got more common going for them than different. The plunge audio definitely here in this area does stand out above the other two in terms of a little bit more detail, a little bit more energy, and it's noticeable when you actually listen to them. Some songs more, some songs less. Female vocals, definitely if it's a female vocal, you'll notice it. But all of them do it really well. And the truth is, plunge audio aside, going back and forth here between the ODA and the Unity, they both sound really good, really, really good. Two different approaches. I think the only thing that, in honesty, if I have to be totally sincere, the thing that I would have liked to have felt a little bit more in the Unique is if it's in fact using an open back design. I would have liked that open back design to have been, or that open back mojo to have been noticeable, and noticeable especially in terms of technicalities by a soundstage and an imaging which is more spacious, more precise. Okay, and just give me that sensation that I'm listening to an over ear, let's put it that way, which I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't get that, but that's just me. It's a minor nitpick, personal. I think the best, as I always say, is actually listen to the thing if you have the opportunity. I'm sure you will not be disappointed. Okay, unless your tastes are completely different to what we've been talking about here. If you like a very neutral bass presentation, then this is definitely not for you. But if you like a nice, organic, old school type of sound, which has got very well executed bass, it's a really high quality bass. Although it's big. I mean, we're talking about a bass on any one of these three IMs, which is around 11-12 dBs, with a pin again, which varies between, in the case of the unique, apologies, yeah, in the case of the unique, we're talking about a pin gain of about 10 dBs, if that, 9, and on the plunge audio even more so. But it's the coherence that they've been able to get out of the way they tuned it, and the different mojos applied to each one of them, because that's another thing that has to be pointed out here. Plunge audio uses a very carefully designed front volume to extract the maximum performance, and use basically no filters on the nozzle and so on and so forth to get the performance that it's getting. ODA has gone down the road, or the route of using helmets resonators to get the type of sound that they wanted, and the Unique has gone down the road down the route of using open back design to again get the sound that they want. So although the final result is almost identical, there are differences between these different approaches, okay, and they are noticeable under ideal conditions. If you're just listening, walking outside, or doing your normal day-to-day, I don't think you'll perceive the differences as much. Maybe on the Unity, the dynamic from plunge, you'll notice it because it's got a little extra energy, like I said, there in that 2 to 4, 5.5 kilohertz area. But it's interesting to see 3 different IEMs using 3 different design approaches, technical approaches, ultimately obtaining the same type of sound. And that wraps it up, guys. I hope again I was able to clarify and shed some light here on the Unity dynamic. My apologies. On the Unique and on the Penon Fan. Both, but the Penon Fan3s to be more precise. Both are really good IEMs from a brand that, love them or hate them. You have to give them merit, which is the fact that they hold strong to their design premise. They do what they set out to do properly. And to be honest, out of all the IEMs that I've tested from them, and it's quite a few, it's basically just been the more top of the line and the more recent models like that the EST80 and so on, that I haven't been able to and the Effect Audio, the collaboration one, forget the name, yeah, that's basically those 2 that I haven't listened to. The reality is they know what they're doing. Penon knows what they're doing. Penon, ISN, which is the same thing basically. They know what they're doing, and the IEMs sound really good. Really, really good. Okay, guys, as always, like and subscribe. Any questions, please feel free to ask me. You take care now. Bye-bye.